About a year ago, Tiger Dan undertook the impossible task of trying to create an absolutely accurate flat Earth map. And I'm going to attach a playlist in the information section showing how that turned out for him. Because it's kind of a sad story in a way. He went into it with great enthusiasm, and things did not go well. So the map of choice was ultimately a circular map, like this one. This is obviously the azimuthal equidistant map projection. This is a north polar projection. And I've got it rotated so that the prime meridian would lie along the x-axis on a Cartesian plane. So it's useful to know some properties of this projection. First of all, the only distances that are accurate are the ones that lie along the meridians or longitude lines. Those are the lines that go through the center of the disk. The latitude lines are the circles. And the only thing that's really accurate about them is their spacing out from the center to the outer edge. Now the standard coordinate system, of course, is latitude and longitude. The 0 longitude is the prime meridian. It goes through Greenwich, England. And if you're going counterclockwise or east on this projection, you're increasing your longitude. And if you're going counterclockwise or west, you're decreasing, going into the negatives. The only angles that are accurate on this projection are from the North Pole, the center of the map. No other angles or lines are accurate representations of angles or length. Tiger Dan apparently did not know that. If he did, he'd have saved himself an awful lot of trouble. So he set about going with location and distance data between airports, which is actually a pretty good idea if you're going to do something like this. So let's put in some airports and their locations. HND is Tokyo International Airport. JFK, John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. LHR is London Heathrow Airport. SFO is San Francisco Airport. And SYD is Sydney International Airport. There's no special reason for this selection other than I did want to make sure I get Sydney in there for something south of the equator. And I also wanted to get Heathrow and JFK in there. So San Francisco and Tokyo were kind of very arbitrary. So these are the airports and their locations. Now let's draw some lines in. I started with Tokyo Airport and drew lines to the other 4 airports. And then I connected the rest of the airports. So we've got some nice triangles going on here. Keep in mind the lengths of those lines and the angles between them do not accurately represent real distances and angles. That's just an illusion from the map projection. So when you see London Heathrow going through Tokyo to Sydney being nearly a straight line, that is in fact not the reality of the situation. Here, let's move on and get to the airport distances. And I've done each combination. And yeah, these are in standard statute miles. Now, it's worth noting that if you go from HND to LHR, yes, Tokyo to Heathrow, you've got 5,960 miles. And Tokyo to Sydney, you've got 4,858 miles. So let's total that up just for fun. That adds up to 10,818 miles. However, second line up from the bottom, you'll notice that London Heathrow to Sydney is actually only 10,578 miles. That's a 240-mile discrepancy. And this is basically why Tiger Dan started running into trouble. Because he was trying to use the map as if it was accurate in terms of lengths and angles. And I promise you, you cannot do that with any flat map. There are aeronautical sectionals, they're conic section projections that for a small area of the region that they cover, where lines on them are actually the shortest distances between 2 points, but I'm not really going to get into that. Now, where did I get these distances? In fact, where did I get the locations? The locations I looked up in Wolfram Alpha. These distances I actually calculated rather than looking up. However, being on a Mac, I can use Siri, and also we can get into the math portion of what I was doing. So here is an Xcode playground, and I was doing some testing to see how well my distances lined up. For example, JFK to Tokyo. Actual distance is 6,772 miles, and I came up with 6,757, rounded up to 6,000, well, 6,758, just rounded up. So, a bit off. In fact, they're all a little bit off. Reason is, I'm doing my calculations based on the coordinates being on a sphere. These are spherical distances. Whereas the distances being reported by Siri are based on the WGS 84 datum, which is an ellipsoid. Now, another thing that's interesting is the angles. Down at the bottom, you can see I did some plane angles and I did some spherical angles. The equilateral triangles in there were just sanity checks to make sure the code was correctly written. And as you know, the interior angles on a plane add up to 180 degrees. And the 3 different plane angles I calculated added up to 180 degrees, as they should. The spherical angles will always add up to a little bit more than 180 degrees. In fact, if you were to do a full quarter circle, they would add up to 270 degrees. That is, each distance being a quarter of the way around the Earth. Now, that first one, the 1.0, that's 1 mile. So a 1 mile triangle, that is 1 mile to a side, equilateral triangle, it turns out that the spherical overage, as you would call it, that is the difference between 180 and the bit over that you get, is actually a tiny, tiny, tiny amount. So this is not the best way to demonstrate that the Earth is indeed a globe rather than flat, because you need fairly large triangles to start getting into measurable territory. Fortunately, there are other ways, and I think those should just wait for another video. So what happened with Tiger Dan? I don't know. He didn't even post all the videos he said he was going to post. So that's a bit of a mystery to me. Now, this code you're looking at, I'm going to post it to Google Drive and put a link in the description so you can download it. If you have a Macintosh computer and are running a late version of Mac OS, I'm running Sierra, but I think it works on the previous version. What was the previous version? I don't even remember. Anyway, you can get Xcode for free from Apple's Mac App Store and run the playground directly, and you can put in other airports. In fact, you don't even have to restrict yourself to airports. Any coordinates will do, and it'll calculate the distance between them as spherical coordinates, spherical distances. So the error will be about 0.5% or less. If you don't have a Mac, you can open up the contents.swift file in the Playground package, and it's easy enough to translate this code into some other language like Python. And if you don't have Python or any other programming languages installed on your machine, and I think only Windows machines come without programming languages installed, worst case scenario, you can use JavaScript in your web browser. So what is the conclusion of this video? Well, let's hop back to the distances slide and look again at London Heathrow going through Tokyo to Sydney. That sure looks like a straight line, but it's not. In fact, it's not even the direct route course that an airplane would take from Heathrow Airport to Sydney Airport, assuming a direct flight is even available and exists.